7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and back in. Change your weight to the other side. Inside foot comes up. Rotate your foot at the ankle. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and reverse it. 3, 2, 1, and I didn't count a 4 and a 5, so we've got the 5 in there. Flex your foot, take it to the back, reaching out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, coming back in, your foot's on the floor, outside foot to the back, bend that front knee, keep your heel on the floor, reach out, bring your other hand around to the front. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now shift to the back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, open your hands. We're going to circle our hands at the wrist.
All right, Mayor, you can start in 3, 2, 1.
All right, we'll call to order the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission. City Council with all members present with the exception of Member Cade, who will be absent the remainder of the evening. With that, we'll go to the big guy in the sky right there, Chairman of our Planning and Zoning Commission. A roll call and certification of quorum of his group.
Yes, sir. We're expecting Commissioner Hendricks also. Was she? She hasn't quite made it yet, but I talked to her earlier. But we do have a quorum with the 4 commissioners in attendance.
Good deal. All right, with that, we'll move. Madam Secretary, was there any citizens' comments? Being none, so we'll turn to the purpose of the workshop discussion regarding the Unified Development Code, also known as UDC, and an update. With that, we'll turn it over to staff.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you for that, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for attending this Unified Development Code workshop. Before we get started, I want to briefly acknowledge a little bit of a logistical issue. Earlier, we had some issues with the supplemental worksheets, and they were intended to be available on the website and were either missing or difficult to get to access. We recognize this caused a little bit of frustration, and we appreciate everyone's patience as staff worked to address it. Those materials are now available online and attached to the agendas and are printed out for everyone's copy here today. We'll continue to make sure that everyone has what they need as we move forward in this progress. With that, I want to emphasize where we are in the process. Today's workshop represents roughly 50% mark for refinement of our Unified Development Code. Nothing you see written today is written in stone. All of this is able to be changed and reconfigured, but at this stage we're working through, very much working in clay space. Nothing's concrete. This is the point in the process where we're working through broad concepts, overall structure, policy direction, things that can still be shaped and refined as needed. And we'll continue to make adjustments based off of feedback provided today and tomorrow at the UDC public workshop. The purpose of today's workshop, though, is to test ideas, identify gaps, have open discussion about what's working and what isn't, and what may need to change before we move into getting into final drafts. Your input here is real and meaningful and has a big impact on what the final product will be. With that, I'd like to continue on to intro for the consultant team, Design Workshop. They've been amazing to work with and have a lot of their staff here today. Claire Hempel and Jessica Garrow, along with the remainder of the staff, have extensive knowledge in updating development codes, growing communities, and helping those communities work through the materials and guidance to be able to develop frameworks where we can have these positive discussions. With that, I appreciate everyone's time and engagement. We're looking forward to a productive discussion, and I'll turn it over to Design Workshop.
Thank you so much, Martin, and good evening or good afternoon, not yet evening, commissioners and council members. Claire Hempel, Design Workshop. It's great to be back here with you today, and as Martin mentioned, this is really our first stab at editing the UDC as we've compiled all of our comments. So what we'll cover today is an overview and schedule. We'll begin with a really quick project overview and schedule update. Then we'll move on to the code update framework. We'll walk through the framework, which explains how the preliminary draft is structured. Third is the draft code recommendations by major topic areas. We'll spend the majority of our time reviewing the draft code recommendations, which are organized by the topic. And then we'll take an intentional pauses for discussion throughout the presentation. Then we'll conclude with next steps towards the 90% draft. And the adoption phase. So everything you see tonight is available on our project website, which is pearlandudc, all one word, .com. for public review. That's available to anybody that would like to look along. So as Martin mentioned, this preliminary draft is the first complete version of the code in its reorganized structure. It includes rewritten procedural chapters, revised zoning districts, an updated land use matrix, modernized standards, and new tools to support development, quality, and flexibility. This is just a slide providing an overview of our full project scope across the 4 phases. Tonight's milestone is Task 3.2, the first draft update, which will include the preliminary redrafted UDC, supporting diagrams, updated zoning and overlay maps. This is really the foundation upon which we will build the 90% draft and the final adoption package. Since our last workshop, we've completed 5 joint council and P&Z workshops, several one-on-one council member meetings and stakeholder sessions, 1 public open house, and our second one is tomorrow evening at the First United Methodist Church, same place as the first one. That one starts at 5 p.m. We've had a few focus group interviews and a few meetings with the Technical Advisory Committee, which is made up of city staff from various departments. So here we are tonight presenting the 50% draft UDC, which synthesizes all the input to date. And this won't be your last chance for input. We're going to ask for any comments that you might have following tonight's discussion, or for any holiday reading pleasure that you might want to do. Looking into the second Friday in January is when we'd like those comments back from you. Our next major touch point will be in late March or early April, when we bring you the 90% draft UDC, incorporating your direction from tonight. Any questions so far about the process, where we are in the schedule, or what the preliminary draft represents?
Any questions on that? Member Coach?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have some real issues with the way this process has been, with the inability to be able to access the UDC 50% plan. I spend my weekends prior to meetings preparing, and I was unable to prepare because we were unable to get any of this information until about 4:15 Sunday afternoon. Throughout the day, we've gotten 2 more emails with additional information. So from my perspective, this type of feedback is going to be pretty limited from less than 24-hour period of being able to access this information. I don't know, Trent, Martin, I think we're paying about $300,000 for this process. And to sit there and have this type of inability to access stuff, not one person, I assume, was able to proof this prior to putting it out there. Because I ended up reaching out to Daniel, our IT director, on Saturday, approximately 9:30 at night, because I tried several times to get through and was unable to. I ended up texting Trent sometime, either 10:30 or 11:30, saying, hey, this thing doesn't work. I don't know how we're going to be able to do this. So from my perspective, I honestly think we should do this another day, and y'all should come back on y'all's nickel to really have an honest, open discussion, because there's some things in here that when I read it, I had no time to discuss with anybody, to do any research on. So with that, I wanted to start out with expressing my displeasure with this process for this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree. I mean, this is a lot of information. We didn't have access to it. And I would like to see us revisit this at a later time.
And I think the way we need to look at this is we do the workshop tonight to get some of the information and ask what questions we have. But as mentioned, I don't know that this is the final time for input. I think between now and meeting number 5, there needs to be a 4.1 somewhere in there. Because again, even if they had worked, even if the links had worked when we got them on Friday,
The links we didn't get till Sunday. I mean, basically this,
yeah, but when they weren't working, we got them whatever day it was.
so,
This is a ton of this is a ton of meaty information, and it's hard to read and understand by itself, but then prepare for a meeting like this to make sure that we're getting this right. So, and I kind of agree. I mean, obviously, y'all had a problem on your end with the site and all that kind of stuff. That's not necessarily you as an individual's fault, but the company had a problem of us being able to access. And so you've got planning and zoning commission members and you've got council members that aren't truly prepared for tonight. So the questions, I think, are, it's just going to be hard to get through it and again, give you final input. And I know we've asked, you just mentioned, sometime in January, but I think council members need to be prepared when they come in here to be able to ask the right questions. And so somewhere between meeting 4 and meeting 5, we need to figure out what that looks like.
well, I mean.
I think that's what you're talking about.
This single document for every citizen, or at least
Oh.
every landowner, is one of the, if not the biggest document
It's huge.
that will impact our citizens' lives.
And I think that's what you're talking about. So I think we have the workshop and we go through some of the things that are here, but I think we need to look very carefully at a meeting between number 4 and number 5. Is there any other questions on process?
Mayor, I like to interject just a little bit too. I too, they mailed it out to us on Wednesday, and I checked several times. I didn't call anybody because Jennifer's really good about taking care of us on P&Z, and I figured that we'd get it at some point. And I checked on Saturday, so I think that most of us are probably unprepared as well. So it's just a statement.
Something we can talk about on the back end of next steps. So with that, we'll let you guys keep going.
Thank you for your comments, and we'll definitely reassess and make sure everything is working appropriately as we move forward. Apologies for that. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. The full 50% draft UDC is available at pearlandudc.com. The online version is fully public and markable, meaning you can click directly into the draft, highlight text, and leave comments that everyone can see in real time. We encourage council, the commission, and the community to review the draft online and share comments as we move forward towards the 90% version. Next slide. To ensure consistency, every topic in the draft followed a common framework that has been used to get to this point. Those include topic, what aspect of the development it affects, goals, what the city intends to accomplish, issues, what's not working today, the recommendations, what should change, and code updates, the actual proposed language. This helps to ensure that every update is transparent, intentional, and traceable back to Pearland's adopted policies. We've also categorized recommendations into the 3 types shown here. The first is in blue, simple and structural. This is working to improve clarity, reducing redundancies, and reorganizing chapters. The second, in yellow, is process and enforcement. This clarifies procedural steps, streamlines decision-making, and updates authority roles. Number 3, in the red, is new policy concepts. This introduces incentives, housing tools, and modern standards aligned with the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. You will see all 3 types in the sections ahead. Let's move on. Okay. We're now going to introduce the main topic areas covered in the draft. These are the areas where you'll see the biggest changes and where we'd like your direction to move forward. This includes the UDC structural changes, zoning districts, including housing redevelopment and infill, incentives and plan development tiers, land uses, including matrix categories and CUPs, and the Broadway expansion and nonconformities. And then additional topics, should we have time for them, include things like food trucks, signage, lighting. Okay, let's move on. Key changes to the, including the structural changes to the UDC include centralizing all procedures, including zoning, subdivisions, relief mechanisms, public hearings, into a single, easy-to-navigate chapter. As all procedural requirements are now consolidated in Chapter 1, the remaining chapters have been updated to reflect revised section numbering. Development standards like landscape, parking, lighting, and signage requirements for zone districts will be moved to Chapter 4. Adding charts and tables to clarify the reviewer's responsibilities, notices, hearings, and approval authorities. This section will also develop process diagrams for every major application type. And in Chapter 55999K, land use-based definitions will be moved into additional sections in alphabetic order for easier reference. Collectively, these improvements significantly increase the usability of the UDC for applicants, staff, and decision makers. Moving on to zoning districts, which is a big part of Chapter 2, we started a draft reorganization of zoning districts with 3 key goals in mind. The first is to reduce redundancy. The second, to simplify the development review process. The third, to align the districts with modern, attainable housing needs and market trends. Many districts have similar standards, which created inefficiencies and enabled only single-family products and not a lot of quality and variety in residential homes. So we consolidated them into clear categories like R1, or low-density residential. This consolidates similar large-scale suburban districts. There's R2, or general residential. This is a typical suburban fabric, supports infill and minor redevelopment, and maintains compatibility through common setbacks. Next is MD, or medium density residential. This expands the middle market housing, allows shared open space and clustered lots with pedestrian-oriented design. Then there's MDHR, or medium high density residential. This bridges townhome and multifamily scales, supports 2 to 3 story apartments, courtyard housing, and mixed-use transition along corridors. And then finally, HDR, or high-density residential, which encourages corridor redevelopment and urban infill. This suggests an active frontage and higher open space standards. So the result here is intended to support more predictable development outcomes and reflects what we heard in the comprehensive plan process. On the commercial, mixed use, and industrial side, we applied the same simplification approach used for the residential districts. We clarified the purpose and intent of each district, so it's clear what type of development is expected. We also refined standards related to building form, scale, and intensity, which helps to ensure consistent character along corridors and activity centers. Additionally, we removed overlapping or repetitive districts and addressed cross-district inconsistencies that made the current code harder to administer. The result is a much more intuitive set of commercial and mixed-use districts with clearer expectations and fewer one-off exceptions or variances. So for example, on the commercial and mixed-use side, we streamlined districts by removing overlaps and clarifying intent. GC and GB are combined into a single general commercial district with consistent standards. We also now distinguish between horizontal mixed-use areas, like traditional shopping centers, and vertical mixed-use districts that support residential or office above retail, with build-to lines, transparency, and activated street frontages. For industrial areas, the former Spectrum District is consolidated into clearer categories, emphasizing entertainment-oriented uses, R&D, and high-quality industrial. So this is the existing zoning districts map and the proposed zoning district map. So these map comparisons illustrate how the consolidated zoning districts, as presented this evening, are organized spatially across the city. They show how many of today's residential, commercial, and industrial districts are simplified into a more intuitive set of categories. So a simplified district structure brings benefits such as reducing confusion for applicants, residents, and staff by creating a cleaner, easier to navigate map. improves consistency in how development standards are applied across similar areas of the city. To support ease of use, the draft includes clear visual site design standards and graphics that are in progress for the consolidated residential and non-residential districts. These standards outline size limits, design compatibility, placement on lots, setbacks, and adjacencies. In parallel, the draft establishes density thresholds that align with existing infrastructure capacity, including roadway networks, utilities, and school enrollment zones, while also accounting for future growth projections and housing needs. For ADUs, the draft provides clear direction by defining an ADU as one fixed habitable structure with full facilities per lot. ADUs would require a conditional use permit, ensuring case-by-case review for compatibility. Based on previous discussions with Council and P&Z Commission, it was determined that ADU regulations required additional standards and regulations to ensure consistency and clarity. As we refined the development review tools in the UDC, we also took a close look at the plan development process, which can sometimes feel overly complex for small projects, yet not flexible enough for large or creative ones. To address this, the draft introduces a two-tier PD system that scales the level of review to the complexity of the application. The Tier 1 PD provides a simplified, streamlined path for smaller, single-use or infill projects with minimal deviations from the base zoning. These are developments that generally align with the community expectations and require only limited adjustments so the review process can be more efficient. Tier 2 PD is intended for the more complex projects, mixed-use developments, larger coordinated sites, or proposals that integrate incentives or performance-based standards. These applications benefit from a more detailed review to ensure compatibility within the development in alignment with a Pearland's broader goals. This restructured approach ensures that simple projects move quickly, while larger or more innovative projects receive the level of attention they need, aligning PD complexity with the review expectations we heard from both staff and development stakeholders. Building on that flexibility framework, the draft also introduces a set of public space incentives. These are voluntary tools, not requirements, that allow limited flexibility like narrower setbacks, less parking, or additional height in exchange for meaningful public benefits and higher quality site outcomes. These incentives can be applied to things like enhanced open spaces like pocket parks, courtyards, or usable community gathering areas. Improved stormwater performance, including green stormwater infrastructure or dual-purpose detention areas. Trail connections and pedestrian linkages that align with broader mobility goals. Healthy tree growth supported by adequate soil volumes or innovative tree management practices. And activated or enhanced frontages, which improve the public realm and overall character of the corridor or neighborhood. Each incentive is intentionally narrow in scope, and the idea is to create options that uplift the quality of development while maintaining the city's standards and avoiding over-flexibility. They provide an opportunity for developments to go above the baseline while benefiting both the city and residents. So here's an example of a landscape outcome for setback reduction. A commercial project installs 100% low water landscaping, including all shrubs, perennials, and ground covers selected from the city's drought tolerant list. Because this significantly improves water efficiency and long-term maintenance outcomes, the project becomes eligible for a 25% setback reduction. It's a simple voluntary exchange, higher quality, climate appropriate landscaping in return for modest design flexibility. Another example of a tree health outcome that reduces long-term maintenance for increased lot coverage. So a commercial developer provides 1,200 cubic feet of soil volume per tree, which supports long-lived healthy canopies and better stormwater absorption. In return, the project qualifies for a 10% increase in lot coverage. This incentive encourages investments in tree health while offering limited, predictable flexibility for additional development area. So I'll pause here for questions and comments.
All right, I have a couple real quick. Page 12 of the presentation, it's where we had the different zoning districts where we were changing from what we have now, right there. So, questions. When we get to those two at the bottom, MD2 and HDR, I see the MF category in both of those. Will this be a by right in those categories, or that's my first question. And then the second question, maybe to staff, is I saw the map, and I think it was one or two slides after this one, where we have the existing zoning map. What would need to be done, or what will happen to modify the map to meet these? What I'm getting at is I want to make sure that we don't just have by right areas that can do multifamily.
So, Mayor, to answer your first question, the way it's drafted now is, yes, multifamily would be by right in those two districts.
Okay. So when we say go, will there be properties in our community that we change the zoning to reflect this, or will it just sit there the way it is now? How do we transition from map 1 that you have on here, slide, it's like 16, going to slide 17, 14, sorry, 14 and 15, sorry. So the one before that is existing, and then this would be the net effect after a change. And so my question is, with these properties that morph and change, would they automatically become these zoning categories?
So there would have to be a notification process and public hearing. We were beginning to discuss what that process looks like this morning. Lawrence, I don't know if you have anything to add there, but the city would determine what that process looks like for rezoning, allowing every property owner with this notification to be alert of it and potentially come and communicate any concerns.
Because I think
Claire, if I can jump in there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say that the MD2, which is the medium density housing, which is called the MF2, doesn't actually have any direct translation on this map, but we currently have multifamily, and multifamily merges into the high density residential. So there is a one-to-one for the high density, which is our current MF. There's not a one-to-one, so there wouldn't be land automatically put into that category for the MD2.
So if it's currently zoned multifamily, an existing apartment,
Multifamily to
it would
multifamily
morph
is
and
essentially
change
what this is looking at.
to this. But and my concern is vacant property.
Correct. No, and I don't believe that this map proposes any additional HDR. I want to say the right word there.
I think that would be certainly something that with either through our own mapping system or whatever, we probably ought to just verify that we don't end up with 1, 2, or 10 tracts of land that automatically have multifamily attached to it if we go that direction. So I'll let you guys speak to that one. Secondly, page 20, real quick, on the I think the kind of the low impact that we're talking about here, I think is good. My question would be, and this is a policy concept, we haven't developed a policy around it, but how would this interface with DD4 and our current requirements for, because we have the same requirements for detention and mitigation and drainage and all those kind of things. I guess this is a staff question. How, what, and where would we need to do to make sure DD4 is in agreement with what we're talking about here? I could see somebody wanting to do this, which I think is a good concept, and then all of a sudden they're beating their head against the wall because the agency across town doesn't line up with it.
This is, again, still in the clay stage, so we'll we will have specific discussions with BDD4.
Anything that's a policy concept like that, we definitely will have to have
Some
those
coordination.
discussions on the side with that. Goza?
Yeah, Mayor, to kind of go along your conversation on the multifamily stuff, how does our population growth when we hit 150 through a census, how does it fit into this? Because that's going to open the door by right. You know, forget this. It's going to be
It's on any business related with the exception, I think, of industrial.
right.
But outside of that, anything that's
Anything that's commercial.
commercial, general business, with a business category to it, other than, I mean, when SD, well, so you have SD 15 also, the small lots, anything
Right.
that's residential can automatically go as well.
Correct.
And so I've had some kind of out of the box conversations with Darren and Lawrence over, you know, do you almost go to an SD? Remember the old suburban development? It's a holding pattern. It's not technically zoned, but it's there. Do you just automatically take all those properties to SD and it forces anyone to come in and get regular zoning?
Well, I mean, that's,
I don't want to do that to people, but what's the defensive measure from having?
well, I mean, we get a lot of resistance on multifamily, so it's one of those deals when it comes by right from the state.
Yeah.
How does it fit in this program?
Which I guess raises the question, you know, is that something we should be thinking about now as we rewrite the UDC? And if so, I don't even know what that looks like, to be honest with you. You want to take a stab at that?
I was going to say, would you like for me to take a stab at that?
Feel free to do so.
There is, of course, the option of having things come through as conditional use permits. So if we're looking to something like a live work or a true mixed use component, or introducing multifamily through conditional use permit within our existing commercial districts, and it's essentially mimicking what once we hit 150 would allow anyway. It just, once we hit the 150 mark, it removes that ability for the discretional approval. What I see as a benefit to that is that you get the discretional approval for that ahead of time. Whereas if we hit 150 and we no longer have that discretional approval, then it's a different can of worms, so to speak. But
A lot to think about as to how you be defensive. That's what we've got to create a defensive mechanism, a defensive posture for both SD 15 and SD 840, because at 150 that's going to happen.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question. Is this something that the state is going to make it by right? I mean, is the state's got laws coming, so it's the
So
multifamily is going to be by right?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, you raise a good question. So for anybody watching online or in the room, let me explain that just a little bit. There's two bills that got passed in the last regular session. Senate Bill 15 came through the Senate. This was the tiny lot bill, or the small lot bill. It allows in any residential area, any lot of 5 acres or more unplatted. So we actually took a look at our entire footprint and came up with X number of acres that would apply to. It's like 1,600 acres that would apply to. You can have all the way down to a 20-foot lot with 10-foot side yard setbacks, 20-foot lot with 5-foot side yard setbacks. So literally a 10-foot wide house on a lot, no garage required, front setback is 10 feet, all those kinds. So take all of our rules, regulations, zoning, setbacks, everything else, throw them completely out, and that's what someone could do by right. Not even the neighbors would be notified as to what would happen. Okay, and we initially were in the bracket. It started at 90. And we were able to get the bracket pushed to 150 with Representative Berry's help. So same thing. Then fast forward, Senate Bill 840 allows by right multifamily, certain types. And there's a laundry list of what the rules, regulations, and everything else that apply to it. They talk about mixed use developments, but it basically in any business category, I think with the exception of industrial, they're allowed by right. And according to Vance and his team, and we were originally in the bracket there as well. The bracket started at 65,000, and we got it pushed to 150 at least. And according to Vance, had that passed and we would have been in the bracket, we would have had 10 applications for building permits the day after it passed. With zero to say, zero input, zero notification to the neighbors, and we all know who they would be screaming at. So that's the context of what this discussion, what we've just been kind of talking about, and how do we become defensive in trying to guard, and still protect our right of zoning, Anyway, yeah.
I believe in that legislation, they also limited our ability to have any input on the materials used as well.
Well, that legislation's been around for 3 or 4 sessions now.
Well,
Right.
right, but currently when we have multifamily projects come before us, we can talk about glass and stonework because we get to have input.
Because we do them in a PD.
Right. But that legislation would throw all that out the window and they
All
can
of it.
build whatever they want, however they want, and we have no say.
That's correct.
So yeah, I mean, it's something very challenging for us to deal with.
Chavru?
Thank you, Mayor. On slide 13, it looks like existing code districts, and I could be mistaken, but NS is missing, neighborhood services. And then are we suggesting that the proposed zoning district will now be NC versus NS? And what is RRN? Or proposed zoning districts under NC?
So, yes, and
NS,
So the
existing.
commercial
Yes.
under neighborhood
So
zones.
I'm
Unit.
Ishita Ghosh with Design Workshop. I believe RRN was residential node, commercial for that area, and then NS was neighborhood, right? So we have combined them together and made it as a neighborhood commercial, which just limits it to one zoning district than having 2 typologies.
Okay, thank you.
Just to expand on that, the residential retail node, which is what RRN stands for, was a reaction to the 2015 comprehensive plan and invented with that as there were nodes throughout that plan. The residential retail node never had any property assigned to it. So it's really, it's a good zoning district that just never has had land dedicated to it to then have those rules applied to it. That's where there's a graphic in there about the setback for a building height that often gets brought up in discussion. That's where that lives.
That one's my fault. But if I could add to that, the residential retail node was somewhat of a theoretical 5 acres here, or 25 for a major, but it was never supposed to be hard and steadfast because there were some corners that already had 3 uses on them, and it wasn't the intention that we would get 5, nor should we look at a corner with a retail node of 5 acres and say, well, 5 divided by 4 is 1.25, so nobody can put anything more than 1.25. So it was never supposed to be hard and steadfast, more of a marker per se. But we did because of because of the concern that citizens showed us for heights, somebody looking over their backyard, privacy rights. That's where we put that from an 8-foot fence. You go over 3 feet and up 1, over 3 feet and up 1, and that triangular look was where no building could increase or be over. So, background, sorry.
Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. So here on slide 13 and on 12, there's that notes column. It just says plan development for mixed use vertical. What, and then if you go back a slide to 12, it's got some SD zone and PD. What are the thoughts with those notes?
So these specific zoning districts, we are looking at it as specifically for plan development. So to the comment before with the zoning map, whatever we have right now compiled and combined, it's pretty much directed from the existing. We haven't changed PDs. So these new zoning districts that has come up, those would go through PD process.
So there'd be no MD1, 2, or HDR without a new PD?
Yes, because there was just one or two plot of lands that was multifamily in the existing zoning district, which we have changed to HDR because that's the category it falls under right now.
Okay. All right, if you go to slide 17, I like the idea of a PD light and PD heavy, but looking at this where we've got the notice after, so on the PD heavy, we have a joint workshop with P&Z and council, then we send out notice. I think here recently we've seen a lot of issues that at least make me wish we had notice ahead of that joint workshop, because we've had several applicants come in. Generally, I think we're okay with the project, and one or two of us up here will say, hey, with the caveat, when 25 or 30 neighbors show up, you're probably gonna have an issue. And so I think it'd be fair to the applicant and to the neighborhood, the abutting neighbors to bring that notice, whether it's an additional notice or just that notice ahead of that workshop. I think it'd make a lot of sense for the citizens. I don't know if there's been any discussion around that.
There hasn't, but it's a great comment, and we'll take note of it.
Yeah.
Well, and I would agree with that, because we'll get comments that, well, we didn't hear about this until, 2 days, it used to be 2 days, now I guess it's 4 days, before the P&Z meeting. And we've already had a workshop. So, I mean, I agree with that to get that feedback and everybody's on the same page, moving through the process the same, I think it would help out.
And my last comment would be on slide 19. I get this as just an example, but and we're in the business of selling water, and we're going to incentivize for designs that allow us not to sell water. So I'm a bit conflicted.
This is for detention.
Oh, it's for detention. Okay.
You can shrink
All right.
your detention.
Okay, perfect. No, then I think that's great, and I'm a fan of the.
You can put more square footage on the
Okay.
more value on the ground.
Perfect.
Lower landscape, so you can put more building on the ground.
Perfect. I'm a fan of these different incentives. I guess in concept, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. That's all the comments I had, Mayor.
All right. Any other questions, comments from council?
Yeah, back on slide 17 with the TP1, TP2, yeah, here, I'll echo what Member Carbone said. I mean, since I've been on council, we've always said we want to have a cheap no. We don't want to put somebody through $100,000 worth of time and energy and plans and everything else in 3 meetings and come to the very end and blow them out of the water. So anything that we can do to help, which was kind of the heart behind this, was anything we can do to help facilitate that process. And if it's going to be a no, get them a no ahead of time. And if it's going to be a yes, then we're all working in good faith. So I would agree with that. If we can improve that notification aspect of it as well, that'd be great.
Back to you, Mr. Koza.
Thank you, Mayor. when I was looking through this stuff over the weekend, I was trying to find where I found it at. But if I remember correctly, this was kind of like a outline or a skeleton of I guess what the 50% plan was more in detailed about. And in this, under non-conforming uses and structures, 2.7 is the section. It on this particular slide that I printed out, it was page or slide 12, section 2.7.3, regulation of nonconformities. And in this column, it said incorporated phased compliance strategies that would allow reasonable timeframes for upgrades and economic feasibility. And I was curious to know, what does that mean?
We'll talk about that when we get to the Broadway nonconformities, about how we are recommending the trigger table.
Okay, this wasn't under Broadway. This was, we have properties that were prior UDC. Our UDC showed up on scene somewhere around the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. There was plenty of businesses and properties prior to that. So there are non-conforming properties across the city, with the exception of what's fixing to happen when 518 gets widened. And what I was looking or trying to understand is, what does incorporated phase compliance strategies that would allow reasonable timeframes for upgrades and economic feasibility? To me, that sounds like the city's going to come in and try and tell people that are non-conforming that we don't want this or that, and you have this timeline to accomplish what we want you to do.
Yeah, and this is Jessica with Design Workshop. The intention is not that the city is coming in and requiring compliance for existing legally established nonconformities. So I think the intention behind that language really is related to the TxDOT piece versus all regular nonconformities, but we'll go back and double check that to make sure that it's clear, because the intention is not to go and tell a property owner you need to come into compliance with something that has existed for the last 25 years.
Okay, well, that's what, like I said, I was wanting clarity on it, because there's plenty of places that are well over 25 years that you want to talk about, fill this chamber, in a heartbeat.
And on that one, I'm going to Mr. Fernandez next. And on that one, I mean, this is a tough one, because through no fault of someone's own, they're creating these nonconformities. It might be parking, it might be landscaping, it might be front setback, side setback, signage, whatever. It could be any number of things. You know, a lot of people are getting compensated because their sign's going to be taken and those types of things. So there's compensation there, but it's creating some nonconformities. I'm going to say it the way I've said it for the last, 8 years since I've been talking about this. What I want to make sure that a business owner or a property owner in the corridor has protection over. And that is, if you've got debt on your building, the bank holds that collateral as is. We come through, TxDOT comes through, rebuilds the road, nonconformities exist, okay? And let's say a strip center gets struck by lightning and we have a fire, or we have a tornado. We had that, a year ago in Alvin, and we have a tornado. Something like that comes through, causes major damage to where this strip owner is going to have to rebuild. Clearly, they can't rebuild to the nonconformity. We want them to bring it up to conformance. The bank is over here going, you mean to tell me the 20,000 square feet that I hold as collateral is now 17,000 square feet? Banks will call the note on stuff like that. Now you got a business owner and a property owner going, how do I pay this off in 30 days? That's real life. And what we're trying to make sure that we have is real life scenario out there, because that landowner didn't create the project that created the nonconformance. Now, granted, if somebody wants to come in, their building is dilapidated and they want to completely take it down on their own and they're going to rebuild, and that's a whole different story and scenario than the one I'm talking about. Because a lot of these folks will have banknotes on it, and so we've got to protect that long-term investment because that's going to be somebody's retirement.
And I think a situation like that, instead of having a 50% rule, if it went to 75% would be a better, because when you're getting into that
Yeah.
type of destruction,
Yeah, and that might be how we help do it. But again, I think in talking to legal and others, they don't want to have a blanket grandfathering either. And I see the rationale behind not having that, but somehow, some way, we've talked about it for several years. We've got to memorialize the nonconformity as of the day that project happens. So in our system, in someone's system, it is known that it's that project that created the nonconformity. You know, they didn't, the project did. Therefore, 20 years from now, when something happens and we're all gone, that's recognized when something happens.
or,
So I just
or
want to make
force majeure.
Right. Yeah, force majeure. Mr. Fernandez?
Are you on the same topic?
Mhm.
I'll wait then.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add I mean, y'all said it, y'all said it perfectly. I'm just going to echo what the mayor and Member Koza have said. You know, bottom line, the businesses should not be burdened by, by our changes, and there has to be a happy medium. The verbiage, I found it on chapter 2 at page 276, article 7. That's where I found where the verbiage was, and I just think it needs to be looked at a little bit more, so that we're careful with that. And then the last thing I want to bring up is, when I see the existing on page 13, when I look at existing code districts and proposed zoning districts, and I see the joining of, like, for an example, GB, GC, just to GC, and I take that information and I find it under chapter 2, pages 175 and 176, and I'm reading, and I'm looking at the reds, meaning that this is what's being crossed out, and the blacks is what's being implemented. I still believe there's more information that needs to be provided, because I'm trying to gather a little bit more understanding of by us joining it to a GC, what changes is that made? What are we losing? What are we adjusting? Some of it is on here, but I don't think all of it is on there. So I'd like to see a little bit more details, and I can imagine I didn't have the time to look at all the zones, but that's the top one, and that's the one I looked at. So I'd like to see a little bit more detail of what's transitioning when that merge is taking place. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Brown?
I have a
We're going to
question real quick. On the nonconformance issue, especially along 518, does the grandfathering and the nonconformance follow the landowner, the building owner? And does that, if they sell it, do we continue that, or does it, what is the point where the legal ownership changes?
It probably will follow the land and the building, the whole thing, the property.
Okay.
And just for, clarification and benefit of everyone, we're going to talk about nonconformities in this discussion. So there's a dedicated section to nonconformities.
Mr. Brown? And
Yeah.
then
I think
I've
Martin.
told him 4 times I'm coming to the
Yeah,
P&Z.
I think
so-
Martin just told me to wait, so I'll wait.
Okay.
It's on nonconformity.
Mr. Chair?
Listen to his.
No comment. Y'all handled
All
it.
right, we blew that one out of the water. All right, let's keep going.
Mayor, can I have one more question? I know we talked about transition earlier in regards to multifamily, but even as something, it seems small as GB to GC, but depending on who your neighbor is and GB, that can have a huge impact. And so I'm sure we're probably not going to get to it tonight, but I think we can have some horrific outcomes if we don't handle the transition correctly.
Yeah, I've got some uneasiness about some of this. Yeah, for sure. And real quick, we all have, I think, individual meetings coming up with you guys. Is that correct? this week. So I think we expect to probably hear some of these comments then.
Yes, great comments so far, so thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to land use. So here we want to highlight the updates to the land use matrix, which is one of the most frequently referenced parts of the UDC. We organize the matrix using APA, or American Planning Association's land-based classification standards, as a decision-making guide, which provides a clean, widely recognized framework for grouping similar uses. This helps with consistency across definitions and makes the matrix easier for applicants, staff, and residents to navigate. The updated matrix now provides clear groupings of similar uses, reducing ambiguity, consistent definitions across the commercial, civic, industrial, and food service categories, a clear separation between types of mixed use, residential, public, and industrial activities, reduced reliance on CUPs by allowing more uses by right where impacts are predictable, and overall a more predictable structure that improves efficiency and review. This shift also supports the updated zoning district framework and the goals of the comprehensive plan. Let's see. So here is just a sample of the simplified land use matrix, where you can see C is for conditional and P is for permitted under the proposed rezoning categories. We'll pause here for any additional comments or thoughts.
Start with planning and zoning. You guys have any questions, comments? All right. Come to council. Mr. Byram?
Yeah. One screen back there on page, 22, one more. Just for clarification, under land uses, it says restaurant with no drive-in and/or drive-through. Are we maintaining the type of categories we have right now, where a drive-through would be something entirely separate from a regular restaurant? We just had that come up. I want to make sure it stays.
Yes, that is correct. It would be separate.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I think for me, it's making sure that the different categories, we can probably add some things that the UDC maybe didn't contemplate. Calling a chapel on a cemetery a rec center is probably not the best way to categorize something like that. So that's an example. We just need to make sure that we, and I'm sure, up-to-date codes have a little bit more broad or better, longer list of things that could potentially happen in certain areas. So sounds good. We'll move on.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to Broadway expansion and nonconformities. So one of the other significant factors and updates in the draft is the addition of new nonconformities section tailored specifically to the Broadway corridor in response to the TxDOT expansion. So the draft includes 1, trigger tables and thresholds based on the degree of site impact so that property owners understand exactly when certain requirements apply. Then procedural adjustments for smaller impacts like minor shifts in setbacks, fencing, or landscaping to bring the site into compliance. There's alternative compliance plans for larger constraints. A commitment to, quote, no forced compliance. We're not making any property owners bring them up to compliance outside of the trigger table that's described. And then clearly articulated guidance for how to handle adjustments to landscaping, signage, access, and setbacks. Next slide. So you may reference the full table on pages 24 and 25 of the charts package. The example here illustrates how a 15% impact of lot would trigger specific actions such as relocation of signage, landscape, or driveway adjustments, while ensuring that owners are not asked to meet standards that the site can no longer support. In this case, the owner will need to replace 100% of impacted landscape on site, relocate lighting within a new property line, relocate the monument sign within a new property line, and obtain a revised driveway permit and enhance the frontage. So we'll go to the next slide and take any questions or comments.
Yeah, I'd back up to that one slide just real quick. And I would say that most of those actions required, and again, quite a few property owners are being in negotiations now, especially the eastern portion of it. And a lot are being compensated if they have to move or their sign's coming down, it has to move. They're being compensated for that. So some of these I don't have big heartburn issues because they're being compensated in the process. I think it's the setbacks. You can't change parking. I see the chamber here, 9 spaces being impacted or 11. 13 spaces being, that's what I meant. 13 spaces being impacted, you don't get those back. And creating them, there's no other space to create. So it's those types of things that I want to make sure. I think we recognize that that's going to be there. So we'll turn it open. I know we've had a lot of conversation on this already.
Yeah, so in reference to nonconformity, it's not necessarily about Broadway expansion. I know we've talked a lot about the commercial impact, but there's also with our the nature of our community changing, where A, we're having infill, but B, we're going to start having revitalization of existing areas. That's going to impact residential areas, so we're going to have neighborhoods, and I know one of the members of P&Z experienced this personally, where we have much older neighborhoods that people will begin to buy homes, tear them down, and rebuild them, and the existing grading and drainage plan for that community doesn't match our UDC now. And so you're going to end up with what we currently have is we have situations where somebody's made to regrade their one lot and it drains entirely different than the rest of the community and actually messes up the drainage for their lot and for the community. So something while we're going through this process of establishing something for non-conforming existing neighborhoods on the residential side as well, where you're not having to come and try to fight how your community was built for one individual lot. I don't know if that's been contemplated in here or not. I can give you an example in more detail if you need.
It would be helpful to get that example. We haven't talked about residential nonconformities, but it would be helpful to understand the more details.
Okay. You want that now or you want that in my phone call tomorrow?
We can talk, whatever your preference is. We'll have time tomorrow. Okay.
I'll explain it tomorrow so we can keep going.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Any other questions? Any other questions, comments here? Yeah. Come to planning and zoning.
I do. I think the requirement to obtain a revised driveway permit through TxDOT is probably not, TxDOT is, I assume they're going to rebuild the driveways, but if they weren't, then that would mean TxDOT could take that time to deny them the driveway access, because we've seen them do that to many business owners. So I think to put them in that situation is probably not the best idea.
Well, I'd back up one sec if you don't mind. Is it obtain the driveway permit through TxDOT or through us?
Ooh, good question. It's 518, it's TxDOT.
So it should be negotiated within in the process of the taking. I don't understand what the permit would be for. I've been involved in multiple takings, and all that is negotiated with the taking. So I don't understand what the.
Well, when you have a property owner that doesn't understand that.
Right. Yes, sir. Right. I guess the point I'm making is, are we going to outline that is a point outside of that process, I guess is my question. And that's where I would probably need to get clarification with staff as to whether or not.
It actually brings up a couple questions that may happen in the corridor. And again, I don't know if we have anybody that's familiar with the project to know this, but I could see in the process of this expansion of Broadway, there could be some driveways eliminated. We've seen it. We've seen it happen on this end of town when we went to the Broadway that we have now, there was some elimination of some driveways because you literally had them, I'm going to exaggerate, 15 feet apart. So there was some drive cuts eliminated, so we had less points of conflict coming out. And off the top of my head, I can't think of one on as we're moving that direction that might happen to, but I could see it happening. I mean, I see Mr. Johnson from the chamber here, and their entrance off Broadway, and quite frankly, doesn't meet the existing spec of distance. How far is it from the corner, Jim? On that roadway, 250? 260.
That's what he's going to tell you.
But to your point, what I don't know is in the negotiations of takings and everything else, if that's been discussed with property owners. Yeah. So we've got a property owner, represents a property owner, that was not discussed. And so again, I think it's a driveway permit that TxDOT. So again, something that's still, anybody that's going through it, Jim, maybe we can get word out to those who are still going through the process. Make sure if possible that you get an agreement with TxDOT that you get a driveway permit as a result of doing this.
Because after the fact, it's too bad.
Yeah, you'd rather get a root canal than trying to do it after the fact. But I could see them eliminating a curb cut or four.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And closing medians, and in my experience, they've been asked, especially on the commercial end, can these two driveways between these two landowners be combined? Most of the time, it's usually a safety issue or
Right.
safety concern that it's done through. So maybe outlining a little bit more as to obtain or permit the driveway through the necessary entity, whether that's us and.
Because I would assume if it's a driveway permit, if it's maintaining a drive cut off of Broadway, that it will be permitted. It'll either be permitted because the project's going to rebuild it or something. I would assume that that's there. I don't have real heartburn over calling it out. I think we need to make sure that those are there. But there's a lot of logistics around there that we just kind of verbally talked about that could be a problem for people in the corridor. We'll open up for questions, comments.
One more comment. So if they are being asked to combine to one driveway, that usually takes away parking for both of the neighboring commercial tracts. Do we have something in place to help them out with that? Because they probably
mean
won't
like
meet their minimum parking.
Like cross access
Yes.
and then cross parking?
Yep.
Good question. That's a planning question.
That's a good comment. We haven't talked about that yet, but thank you for those comments about
I mean, I think we encourage cross-access as much as we can and cross-parking as much as we can, but it's a matter of we don't force it either. So we do if it's a greenfield. Hey, you're going to build a stub to here because when that develops, they'll be able to tie into it, so it'll be known. But now we're talking about retroactively, right? So.
And it's difficult with retroactive because the setback of the buildings themselves don't lend to it, or the parking lot itself. And I can think of a few a few cross accesses that would have helped us sell some parcels in Pearland, where the post office is, the drive off of Broadway. Back when I was helping Gary Buchek locate a site, he had landed on that site, and I told him to run because other people had tried to negotiate access from that drive, and can't get a hold of the right person, or
The federal government won't allow it.
Exactly. And then the other parcel I would tell you that I think you'd see a reduction in drive cuts, at least, is that Exxon on it was an Exxon, I don't know what it is today, on 1128 and Broadway on the southwest corner there, that I think it has two accesses on Broadway itself and one on 1128, and it's a small corner as well. So it's just kind of an issue there.
Questions from council further? Seeing none, we'll move on.
So a few additional things we can update you on with the time that we have left, which is we're making good time. When it comes to the landscaping section, this portion has been modernized to better support long-term tree health, stormwater management, and ease of administration. The key updates in this section include a reorganized species list that follows the right tree, right place principles, tools that support dual purpose stormwater areas. When we say dual purpose, making sure that we're in compliance with the district, of course, but utilizing these green spaces that don't hold water for recreational spaces, trails, that kind of thing. More consistent screening standards across districts, and updated maintenance expectations aligned with industry standards. And by industry here, we mean the nursery industry, and alternative compliance options for constrained spaces. These updates create a landscaping section that is both more flexible and more effective for long-term maintenance, beautification efforts, cost, and overall open space health. For signage, we consolidated all standards into a single section, added diagrams and illustrative tables, and clarified the requirements, such as allowance, prohibited, etc., for temporary, monument, wall, and other sign types. The draft also aligns enforcement procedures with state law and includes clear sections for tenant changes, ownership transfers, and sign replacement timelines. The parking section has been updated to reflect both national benchmarks and Pearland's development patterns. Key improvements include updated ratios by use, caps for oversized surface parking lots, definitions and criteria for shared or joint parking, and modern screening requirements to improve the public realm. These adjustments help calibrate parking to actual needs while supporting a more walkable, efficient development pattern. For hotels, the draft focuses on providing clarity and improving consistency across different lodging types. This encompasses differentiating between traditional hotels, bed and breakfasts, and STRs, or short-term rentals, updated regulations for hotels, such as landscaping, site circulation, required amenities. And finally, the expanded roles of hotels are weaved into the proposed zoning districts to help clarify locations where each may be allowed by right or require a CUP. And lastly, for food trucks, we heard that current standards can feel scattered or inconsistent, so the draft consolidates everything into one clear section. This includes definitions that remove ambiguity, such as what are qualified as a mobile food unit versus a temporary vendor, site design expectations, such as where a truck can park, amenities like seating or waste receptacles that are needed, spatial parameters, and more. A clarified permitting pathway that explains the permit needed and how often, and clear direction on locations by zoning district. This makes operations easier for staff to administer and for operations to be predictable for vendors. So pause here for any further questions or comments on those topics or anything that we've covered already.
Anybody with, we'll go to Pete, planning and zoning first. All right.
I apologize, I do have a comment. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past is I don't want to call it's where you have a business and they have, the whole window is taken up as far as advertisement and their services. Do we have a plan for that in the UDC? Because I don't know that we have any type of current code on how much they can put in their window.
Yeah, the coverage of their transparency. Yeah, they're covering it up with writing and advertisements and all that on.
And photos and images. Mostly the hair salons are probably the number one person or food establishments. Do we have something currently for that?
So currently we do. There is a section in the temporary building signs that talks about the allowance and ability to cover windows. Off the top of my head, it says that you can either cover 25% of all windows or 50% of one window. It is something that we struggle with enforcing because someone can easily take it down and then put it back up and then take it down. So it is something that we actively enforce, but it is difficult to find them all.
Go to the food truck slide real quick. So I had a question. It says food truck park and food truck plaza, and obviously you can't do those in residential. But I also want to make sure that in a residential area, if somebody has a private party and they hire a food truck to come and be part of the food, it's not necessarily catered inside, but people go to the food truck. I want to make sure that those types of things are allowable. I mean, people or an HOA does that, and they hire a food truck to come in, to be there for an evening, and then same thing, the good old fashioned ice cream truck and go down the streets.
Absolutely, and that type of use is not what is discussed here in the food truck park and plaza.
I was assuming because it said plaza and park, I got that. We wouldn't put a food truck park or a plaza in a residential area. I just want to make sure that somebody can hire a food truck and they can.
Well, in Baker's Landing for a while, they had food trucks right across from their park and their detention pond right there. That I don't know, for maybe 6 months.
Dealing with their HOA or whoever's hiring.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who it was.
Yeah.
National Night Out is a perfect example.
Night out. But people do it for birthday parties or a Cinco de Mayo party or something of that nature. Where I just want to make sure that those are not covered in any of that. Any other questions, comments? Mona, you had one. Sorry. Okay.
I have a quick question. To that note, if the food truck is asked to come to a publicly maintained park, I guess, for a birthday party, would they need to be able to set aside, or would they be required to set aside any of this? That I speak not of a publicly held event like our Independence Day or anything, but if a birthday party or if the food truck decided to, oh, hey, look, there's a couple hundred people at the park today. I'm going to drive my food truck, park it, and make a buck. Would they then be required to cordon off, provide some of the seating and whatnot that's in the mandate?
Good question. What's the enforceability of that, Martin? How would we enforce something like that? Because I don't think they would be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Because like something at Independence would be either privately held by the city or privately held by whoever's renting the park out.
Right.
And food trucks would be a part of their plan. But if somebody that's not a part of their plan just, hey, I'm going to go take advantage of this.
Yeah, I don't believe that that's the intent of our parks, is to establish food truck parks. It's wonderful that we have parking available, but that's for visitors to have and utilize for themselves. And we have the special event permit, which is where we've got Independence Day and all of those variety of events, allows for medallion mobile food units to come and take part. But those are set up well ahead of time.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Byron?
Yeah, and this may be a matter of just not being able to dig into it too deep, but we did talk previously about landscaping requirements in commercial parking areas, especially some of the bigger ones where the landscaping we've required to put in, you can't see to drive through the parking lot or to drive out into the drive lanes. And so in the changes you guys are suggesting for the landscaping, has that been accounted for? How are we addressing that?
Yes, it'll establish clear sight lines. So trees will have to be, just like for ADA accessibility, trees have to be a certain clear height and shrubs can't be any higher than, let's say, 30 inches. And that typically allows, that's the code that we've seen at engineered intersections, is having those clearances for visibility.
Okay, so that's not listed here. So that's part of y'all's update in here. When you say engineered intersections, you mean where streets meet streets? Because I'm talking about more like inside parking lots where you're going across strip centers.
Yeah, no, I was just saying engineered intersections as an example where you see those same similar, you need the really visible, clear sight lines for safety. So we would apply those same principles into parking lots as well, where you have a lot of moving vehicles.
Okay. And we talked a little bit earlier about making sure that the things that we do are in compliance with DD4, and Martin, you guys talked about making sure that we talk to them when we make some changes. It seems to me that this would be a good opportunity, potentially, as we're updating landscaping and whatnot, to maybe have some conversations with them, see if we can't get on the same page about doing some landscaping in detention areas. I know it's not their favorite thing, but there is some there's some value, especially when we start getting into more of this infill stuff for screening purposes, for water consumption purposes, and improving our canopy. So possibly we could have some of those conversations as well when we go through this.
And I think that the key to that piece is if it's on private land, private property, private development, that's one thing. If it's DD4's personal detention pond that they're owning, operating,
100%.
maintaining, that's a whole different story. But
Sure.
but if it's somebody coming in and they want to amenitize, there's a couple of ponds around town that subdivisions have been built, and they've been able to plant trees in the bottom of them, and it doesn't hurt the stormwater.
Helps.
Actually helps it. So
Yeah.
and looks good.
And
So
then my last comment or question would be in relation to the slide 33, the hotel standards recommendations. It says added definitions and regulations, and then same paragraph says other operational elements. What are the added regulations or other operational elements? And I'll tell you the reason behind my question is I know we want to have across all the developments that we're doing in our community, we want higher quality developments, but at the same time, we want to be careful that we don't make things cost prohibitive for people to be able to come in and develop in our community. And I've heard a number of times when certain proposals have come in involving hotels, particularly full-service hotels or hotel convention centers, that they just won't pencil in Pearland. And so I want to make sure that we're not putting a bunch of regulations into the UDC that basically say these are great ideas, but you can't operate Pearland. Does that make sense?
you're practically not going to be able
Yes.
to. Right.
Right. I mean, it doesn't do any good for us to put a bunch of regulations in that basically just says don't come to our city.
Right.
So I want to make sure.
Definitely not the intent.
Yeah. So what are the proposed changes, or is that too long of a list to get into and just need to go read it later?
So with the definitions, we've added supplementary uses to it. Sorry, I'm going to go a little behind. So that it gives a better clarity with the amenities and operations of each of the typologies of hotels. So as an example, we've defined boutique hotels, limited service hotels, full service hotels, extended stay hotels, and each of them, as an example, say the limited service hotel would have at least minimum amenities like an indoor pool, spa, fitness center, playground, conference center. But at the same time, it does not need to have full service restaurant services. But in a full service hotel, it'll provide all the amenities. Additionally, will also require to have restaurant serving 3 meals daily. So it's the operational standards, and that we've started defining that in this 50% draft, and it'll be further defined by the 90%.
Are we looking at minimum numbers of rooms?
We haven't gotten into that yet.
Okay.
Yes.
I could see, I know, Rishi, you and I talked, that could be one of the things that we need to look at as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, when I looked at this on page 259, and to Councilmember Byron's comments, I can assure you there's nothing in here would can hinder anybody from building anything. What my fear is, if you look at it very carefully, I think we had talked about not giving somebody false hope of a lower end brand to come in here. But I think according to this, when I read it, you're giving that false hope. The standards are very, very doable. And so if you kind of read it on page 260, where they kind of say you had to meet for a limited service hotel, you just got to meet 3 of the items here. Most hotels now will have a pool, fitness center, because we're not defining the size. So that's I can have a fitness center that's 200 square foot. So I mean, it's a fitness center. Yeah, a treadmill. It's a fitness center. So I think it's not it's certainly it's not. And I think my point earlier when we had this conversation was we want to elevate ourselves to a higher brand. And so I would say the minimum room count Mayor referred to, I think, is essential to put it on. And so, but none of these are, I would say.
And my only caveat to that is, there could be a super unique boutique hotel that wouldn't meet a room minimum, but their amenity package and everything else would be such that we know what we're talking. You know the difference.
Yes, sir. And I'll tell you, they do describe the boutique hotel in here, but of course, boutique hotels are going to be very upscale with Michelin star restaurant or something very unique, right? And in our town, we don't have a repurposed building that we could make it a unique hotel, so it's going to have to be ground up.
Right.
And so you could, but my fear again, if you kind of look at this a little bit lower, it actually talks about motels. I guarantee you, not a single council member is going to approve that. Right. And so, is it a false hope, or do we remove it completely?
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not advocating that it's just Katie bar the door and build anything we want. We have continuously tried to maintain a good quality product of anything that's built in our community, whether it's commercial building, a multifamily, live work, whatever it is. So I agree with you. We want to maintain a certain standard. And if I read this correctly, they're still all going to require a CUP, right? So there is a component of it where it's got to be a quick no from us if they come in and want to build a motel. I think you're right. Nobody here, but at the same time, if
it's written in here, you're giving them hope, and I think that's your point.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at. If we know we're not going to build a 16-unit motel in town, don't let the code allow for it and just tell them no when they get here. Yeah. So I understand there's a balance.
Yeah. Good comments, Mr. Carbone.
Mayor, on the hotel section, so the 2.4.6.5 C2 says change of ownership or change of use shall require a reapproval of the CUP. How mechanically, how does that work? So let's say Rushi sells one of his hotels and somebody comes in and has to reapply for a CUP, we say no. I mean, I guess I struggle with that in practice. How does a reapproval of that? So if we don't approve it, we're essentially saying, hey, Rushi's hotel is worthless and somebody just needs to come in and knock it down or convert it to an office building? Right. Like how do you see that working in practice?
I think the intention was that if the quality of the hotel had declined since the CUP, was originally approved, it would be an opportunity to revisit that set of standards and make sure that from that baseline list of amenities that things hadn't changed. So it would still be measured against the same criteria that had.
I just see the subjectivity of it.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that, Rushi?
No, sir. And that was, I guess, a comment I was going to make, that there is no way we allow anybody else that we issue CUP to come up here and say every time you sell it, you got to go through the process again. And I can see your point. I do see your point that the concern was we want to keep the high quality value. But you're not going to be able to enforce it. Now, I think the mayor talked about earlier, we have 30-year debt on this thing. In 10 years, if the quality goes down, but the amenities are still the same, I don't want this council to say, well, I don't like the color of that building. No. right? I mean, that it could happen. So I don't think that's fair. I think it's really up to code enforcements or the CUP to kind of come in there, but not the council. If you have a council that doesn't like it, it's not fair for them to say, we're not going to allow you to change ownership on this.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I've heard Mr. Patel, refer to a few of our, it's the branding, it's the flag, that's important. And, the next thing 10 years in, 8 years in, somebody's lost their corporate flag. Now, what are they calling their hotel? What are they running it as? And it's, just XYZ Hotel, XYZ Inn, or whatever the name is, kind of generic. And I think, to your point, we can't necessarily stop that, because that comes down to the individual operator and how they ran their business and maybe got themselves into that or whatever. And I agree. I don't know that we can enforce that. Only thing we can enforce is on the front end what's built. And then I certainly don't want to be in a position, I wouldn't want to put any council in a position of approving retroactively a CUP. While I think 99% of the time that it's just going to be a perfunctory thing, you're going to go about doing it. Boy, that 1%, and what does that look like?
But I think that goes back to Councilman Patel's point, is let's set the standard high up front and know what rules you need to play by. Because I'd struggle with any type of business having to come back before a CUP on something like this.
And we'll grow, and as we have more sports tourism and things of that nature, we're going to have more of those types of events coming into town. So our hotels over time will grow. The market will prove that. And what we have in town now, I would say is a good representation of the industry. While we might have, we have 1,200 rooms. How many properties? About 12. We might have that many that are marginal. To say that, and so, I think we're doing pretty good in the situation. So I think we need to make sure that we're just elevating the front end, as already been mentioned. At the same time, I don't want to make it so onerous that we can't get certain hotels in here, but I think that's where the CUP process comes in. If they don't quite meet a certain threshold, then they're coming in here requesting the CUP and bringing their case to council. And I'll tell you, if you just go, one of the things, and I'll say it for the record, I'll say it in a very gracious way. What we absolutely don't want, you can just go across the Beltway up Telephone Road, and there's several hotels up and down that corridor that I will say we absolutely don't want. Rich, in fact, that's what sparked our conversation 10 or 12 years ago. That's what we don't want. And just making sure how we put that in code, I don't know. I'll let Darren and Lawrence figure that part out. But there's a few of those that we just absolutely don't want. But we do want to raise the bar.
And I think that's the balance that you're trying to find, because to Member Carbone's point, if we go in and set the bar high, and our expectation is we're going to go through the CUP process and let them lower the bar during the CUP, but we've set it so high that they're not even going to come try, because they look at it and go, well, I can't pencil this, so why even bother?
Yeah, there needs to be
the expectation. The developer is not going to say, well, I hope that they're just going to lower their standards so that I can put a hotel in that's a nice hotel. So we got to have a balance between, we don't want terrible stuff, but we don't set it so high that it makes it, we send the wrong signal, I guess is what I'm good quality, but don't come here.
Exactly. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll turn it back to you guys.
Okay, just a couple more slides. So we also want to mention that we have a questionnaire available at PearlandUDC, all one word.com. That's PearlandUDC.com. We encourage everyone here and everyone watching to complete this. The link is available for the next 4 to 5 weeks, and it's going to be an important tool that will help us prioritize refinements and identify areas where additional clarity or examples may be needed. Our next workshop will be held in late March, early April, pending the discussion from earlier in this meeting. That was how our schedule here was built, but we've received the comment from earlier. The March-April timeline is where we will present the 90% draft of the UDC. It will be our final working meeting, but that version will include refined language, updated diagrams, and consolidated feedback from the council members, commissioners, stakeholders, and city staff. And after that, we will then move into final revisions and prepare for the final adoption phase. And so thank you all so much for your time this evening and the attention that you've put into reading the materials. And we look forward to further comments that you have in our one-on-ones tomorrow. Thank you.
Quick question that the Mayor Pro Tem just brought up. Are we going to vote on the UDC update as one overall vote, or will it be a series of several votes?
To be 100% honest with you, Mayor, that's a bit of strategy that we haven't gotten to quite yet. That discussion will take place with city
I
manager.
do know there'll be public hearings because of the
Right.
nature of it, and we'll go through that process. But
Yeah, if we haven't worked that out yet, which I'm actually kind of glad we haven't, I would suggest that we take it by sections. Because I would hate for there to be one particular section that council doesn't like and we blow the whole UDC up because of it. I know that's going to be more of an arduous process, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Much like other plans, I would hope that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Understood. Good deal. All right. Last call for questions. Mr. Chairman, you guys have anything?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right. Martin, you guys have anything?
Just as a gentle reminder, this is still at the clay stage, so everything that's discussed here tonight is all still up for debate and for additional refinement. Looking forward to working with Design Workshop to have that additional meeting put out, and look forward to seeing comments back. We do have tomorrow night to look forward to with the open house, so I look forward to seeing people gather there at First United Methodist Church for additional discussions on what we've heard today.
All right. Still fluid. More to come. All right. With that, we'll move to adjournment at 5:37.
Hold on a minute there, Mr. Mayor. We have some unfinished business. I'm here to discuss a proclamation of naughty and nice from the Office of Santa, City of Pearland. I will probably say some things that will make the hair on your neck stand up. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you grow hair on the back of your neck? It is well known that I give people coal for being naughty. And I am here trying to decide if coal is going to be on the naughty list since you are trying to put coal on the ballot. At a time of year when most have visions of sugar plum fairies dancing in their head, you envision a national title floating around in yours. But don't feel bad. I know a bunch of Aggies that feel the same way. You like to share that the population of Brazoria County is going to double in 25 years. We didn't know that you meant that was just your family. Now, I do look forward to getting your grandkids' letters every year. Thankfully, those coals are all on the nice list, and I know they get that from Pearland's First Lady, Lisa. I remember not so many years ago getting a letter from you. It read, "Dear Santa, all I've ever wanted is to be mayor of Pearland." Well, I looked at the other people running, and your wish was granted. Well, this year I get a letter, "Dear Santa, I have one wish, and that is to be the Brazoria County judge."
you.